Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello friends, welcome to this lecture series of BSc with Chemistry, discipline specific elective of quantum chemistry, spectroscopy and photochemistry. In continuation with our previous lecture of NMR, we will continue in this lecture to understand the practical approach of NMR. In principle, we will see the H1 NMR and then we will follow with some numericals. So now let us try to understand the H1 NMR spectrum and the chemical shift. This chemical shift term is very important in NMR spectroscopy if you would like to solve the numericals based on your knowledge in NMR spectroscopy. Now, previously, we have seen infrared and UV visible spectroscopy. Unlike infrared and UV visible spectroscopy, where the absorption peaks are uniquely located by a frequency or the wavelength, the location of different NMR resonance signals are independent on both the external magnetic field and the RF frequency. Now, why this is? This is so because no two magnets will have exactly same field. That we need to understand. And your sample cavity is in between two different magnets. And the resonance frequency will vary accordingly, and an alternate method for the characterizing and specifying the location of NMR signals is equally needed. So this problem can be notified or can be understand well if you see these 11 different compounds shown in this particular figure here. Basically, although the 11 resonance signals are distinct, you can see over here, they are well separated from each other. But an unambiguous numerical locator cannot be directly assigned to each of them. That is the biggest problem. Now, why this is and what can be the solution? Because there is no reference point. You cannot know at what scale it is because both the magnets are operating differently. So one of the method of solving this problem is to report the location of NMR signal in a spectrum with reference to some standard signal which is obtained from some standard compound which can be added to the sample. So such a reference standard should be, what should be property of such a reference sample? It should be chemically unreactive to your sample. Secondly, it should be easily removed from the sample after your job is done. That means after your measurements have been taken. And apart from that, it should be a single sharp NMR signals that does not interfere with the resonance normally observed for the majority of the organic compounds. And one such compound is the tetramethylsilane, which can be represented like this, and we call it as TMS. So it usually referred as TMS, which beats all our characteristics that we have just now spelled out, and it has become the reference compound of the choice for proton and carbon NMR. Because this TMS has been selected in NMR spectroscopy due to four of its important properties. Namely, that this TMS has the molecular formula that you can see over here. This is its molecular formula, which has 12 equivalent protons. So all of them, they resonate at the same frequency, and therefore a sharp single peak is obtained with the small amount of TMS. Very small amount is needed. This is the first part. Secondly, it absorbs at higher field as compared to the most of the organic compounds, and hence the scale selection becomes very easier. Apart from that, it is very likely that it dissolves easily in most of the organic solvents. And lastly, it is highly volatile, and because of this, it can be removed easily from the sample after recording your spectra. Now, since the separation or say dispersion of NMR signal in this particular sample is in this particular magnetic field is dependent on say your one of the additional factor, and that particular additional factor is that in order to provide an unambiguous location or unit which as shown in this particular figure, in this particular figure, we can use this TMS as one of the reference solvent or as one of the reference material in the solvent sample. Say for example, you can take the example of acetone, methylene chloride, isn't it, or benzene, in which case, in this case, if you can see, they are giving the single signals. Now, to correct these frequency differences to their field dependence, we divide basically them signals by the spectrometer frequency. Say by the 100 or 500 megahertz, whatever it is, with whatever magnet you are taking it. So the resulting number would be very small. And since we are dividing their frequency, like that is for hertz, it must be in hertz by the magnetic field frequency, that is in megahertz. So the multiplied number will be in terms of millions, because that denominator number will come up. So if you can see over here, so your frequency of sample minus frequency of reference upon frequency of reference, if you take, so your shift will be always in terms of this 10 to the power 6 category, that is it will always be in terms of this million. So this operation gives a locator number which is called as chemical shift. So you can see these are the chemical shifts. These blue lines or these lines, they are giving you the chemical shift, and they have the units of parts per million because it is in million. So it will be they will be having the chemical shift, and you can see the magnetic field is given, and these particularly are the things which are represented in parts per million, and the symbol for this particular chemical shift is usually given by delta. So in NMR, always this delta will show the chemical shift which has arisen due to this particular division, that is hertz upon megahertz of the applied magnetic field, and it will be in ppm. It will be represented in ppm. Let us go ahead for the understanding of its utilization. So now this chemical shift will have certain peculiar properties. What is chemical shift? We need to keep in mind this chemical shift. We are giving little stress on this particular property. This chemical shift, as we have seen, that it is the position at which the signal occur in the NMR spectrum, and it is called as the chemical shift. So whatever is the position with reference to your TMS signal, so whatever is the deviation, that is called as the chemical shift. Also, the chemical shift is a measure of how far the signal is from the reference TMS signal, and it has a unit of parts per million that we have seen, because it comes because we divide hertz upon megahertz of the applied magnetic field. This TMS signal is used to define the 0 position on this scale. And finally, the chemical shift is determined by measuring the distance from the TMS peak in hertz and dividing this distance by the operating frequency of the instrument, that is in megahertz. And therefore, the unit of this chemical shift will come in the ppm. This particular table shows the typical NMR chemical shift. If you see the functional group is given in this column, the type of organic moiety is given, the H1 chemical shift is given, and C13 chemical shift is given. So we'll see basically what is H1 chemical shift right now. So if you see the C for alkane, it is 0.7 to 1.8. Then for the higher carbonyl compounds or allylic compounds, it is 1.6 to 2.4, and so on. You can see over here. So these are the references which you can obtain from any of the standard textbooks. Let us now try to understand what we have gathered from the theory of the NMR. So H1 NMR signal can be interpreted based on the based on these particular points, that is number of signals, position of signals, intensity of signals, and splitting of signals. So what we will do, we will go one by one for understanding of each of them. Okay, let us proceed. So let us see the number of signals and how NMR spectrum is dependent on this can be understand using the NMR number of signals. Basically, it is expected that all the protons should absorb the same frequency or they should give a single peak. However, this is not the case. In a molecule, the electronic environment around this proton is not always the same. If you take the example of this ethanol, isn't it? So environment of each of the proton is not the same. CH3 here, CH2 here, this is OH here. So for each of the proton, the environment is different. So the proton present in the same chemical environment basically are called as equivalent protons. And the protons which are present in the different chemical environment are called as non-equivalent proton. So there are three particularly groups of non-equivalent protons, so CH3, CH2, and OH, isn't it? You can see over here. So a group of equivalent protons which absorbs at same frequency, and therefore each particular proton which are in a particular environment, they will give a single peak. And hence in this particular case, the number of peaks obtained, they are equal to the number of groups present in the equivalent protons, isn't it? So how many equivalent groups are present over here? One kind, two kind, and three kind. And therefore we will have three peaks in this particular case. You can see, so there are three groups of equivalent protons, three for CH3, two for CH2, and one for hydroxide. This is OH, and hence this molecule gives three peaks in NMR spectrum, isn't it? We will see further how they are further going to split, but then right now it is not the time to see the further splitting. But then this is how the three peaks will appear at this particular shift from this particular TMS signal. Okay. If you go ahead, we can summarize the number of signals, and we may go on predicting the number of peaks based on this knowledge in different environment. Say like for methane, you can have one signal. Ethane, you can see it will give one signal because all the protons are in the same environment. Likewise, you can see in this particular propane, you can have one kind of proton and the another kind of proton, because these and these, they are in the same proton. So there will be two signals, first kind, and second kind. In this case of butane, you can have the symmetric molecules, like there is one kind of proton, and the other kind of proton. So there will be complete symmetry, and therefore there will be only one signal. Likewise, if you see in this case, you can have one kind, second kind, this is third kind because environment is changed, this is again the second kind, and this is first kind. So all in all, 1, 2, and 3. So this particular compound will give three signals in your NMR. This is exactly the case of 12 protons which are present in the same environment, and therefore this kind of compound, like TMS compound, it is present in a TMS compound, so it will give a single peak. In this case, there will be two signals. You can see over here A and B type. In this case, you can have 7 signals. If you see, there are 7 different groups which are present in different environments, and therefore this compound will give you 7 signals. Likewise, if you see benzene, all the protons are in same environment, and therefore there will be a single sharp peak for this particular benzene. If you look at the cases of monosubstituted benzene, you can have different environments, like one kind and second kind, and this is third kind. So there will be 3 peaks. So A kind, which are the two ortho hydrogens or protons, B kind 2 meta positions, and C kind 1 para position. So you can have these peaks based on their position. So as the environment changes, the peaks are going to change. In this case, if you see, there are two states, that disubstituted benzene, if you see, so it will have two states of proton, like one kind and the other kind of protons. In this case, if their position changes, you can have, see, like one kind of proton, the other kind of proton, and the third kind of proton. So environment, there are 3 kind of environment, and therefore there can be 3 sets of peaks. In this case, disubstituted, we can have only one kind of environment, and therefore there will be a complete single set of signals. Similarly, I can go on doing like this for disubstituted benzene. we can have like 3 sets of peaks over here. In this case, 4 sets of peak over here, because one kind is this, second kind is this, third kind is this. In this case, there will be 2 sets. In this case, if you see A kind of protons, B kind of, C kind of environment, D kind of environment, and E kind of environment, and this particular has F kind of environment. So there will be 6 signals for this particular compound. In this case, if you see, there will be again 6 signals. In this case, there will be 4 signals. There will be 4 signals. If you go for trisubstituted benzene, you can further differentiate, like the environment of these 2 protons are similar. These protons, they are different, and therefore 2 sets. In this case, there will be 2 sets. There will be 3 sets in this case, and likewise so on. You can go on predicting the number of or different type of environment for the protons, and you can go on predicting how many number of sets for the peaks you are going to get in NMR spectroscopy. We can actually distinguish between the pairs on the basis of NMR spectroscopy. Say, for example, if you see the ethanol and dimethyl ether. So if you see the ethanol that we have seen in the earlier slide as well, there are 3 environment, like A type, B type, and C type, and therefore it will give you 3 peaks. Whereas the molecular weight is same, but this dimethyl ether, if you see, there is only single environment for all the protons, and therefore there will be a single peak. So from this peak as well, you can predict whether if the molecular weight is same, what kind of compound it is. Similarly, for propanol and acetone, if you see, there are 3 peaks based on this A, B, and C kind of environment, whereas there will be a single environment in acetone, and therefore you will get only 1 peak in case of acetone. Likewise, you can predict regarding the orthobromophenol and parabromophenol. If you see the number of different environment, like A kind, B kind, C kind, D kind, E kind. So there will be 5 peaks for orthobromophenol, whereas there will be only 3 peaks for the parabromophenol. Depending on their positions, the environment will change. Similarly, if I would like to draw the structure of the isomers to predict, and if you say ask me to calculate or draw the peaks in the PMR signals, so I can actually utilize them. Like if I take this particular 1,1 dibromopropane, so I can take the environment, like this is A kind of environment for this particular proton, B kind of environment for these protons, and C kind of environment for these protons. So there are definitely 3 different environments for the protons, and therefore there will be 3 peaks. Whereas for 1,2 dibromopropane, if you ask me, so there will be A kind of protons, now B kind of protons, and these are the C kind of protons. So there will also be the 3 peaks. Likewise, 2,2 dibromopropane, you will get only 1 peak, because the environment is going to remain same everywhere. And 1,3 dibromopropane, you will get 2 peaks, because all the protons, they will be differentiating into 2 different environments. So let us now try to interpret the NMR spectrum. Basically, to interpret the NMR spectrum, we need to know several things. There are certain effects like shielding effect, de-shielding effects, so which are based on at what position the signals are present, whether they are shifted to some other place, or whether the particular proton is shielded due to some effect, or whether it is de-shielded due to some other effect. So that we need to understand. And therefore, whenever any proton which undergoes resonance, and when the applied magnetic field strength or the frequency that matches with the energy separation between the 2 levels, we can actually interpret the position from the position of the signals. So in actual practice, the frequency is kept constant, and the applied field strength is increases continuously. This is what we can do while recording the NMR spectra. So the magnetic field experienced by all the proton is not always same. It depends on the electronic environment, isn't it? We can understand the proton is not open. Actually, it is surrounded by the electronic cloud, and this electron in a molecule, this produces their own field around the proton, and this particularly is called as the secondary field or the induced magnetic field. And if this local field opposes the applied field, the effective magnetic field decreases. because this has generated its original, its secondary magnetic field, isn't it? And such proton is actually called as the shielded proton, and the effect is called as shielding. Okay, because these electronic field, they have developed their own field and it is now shielding the proton. So such shielded proton resonates at higher field strength, or we can call it as a upfield. You can see here, it can called as upfield. It will shift, isn't it? And secondly, if the induced field coincides with the applied field, the effective magnetic field basically increases and the proton is called as de-shielded, and basically it is called as a de-shielded proton, and this effect is called as de-shielding effect. And such de-shielded proton resonates at little bit lower field strength, or which we call it as a down field in this direction. So the shift in the position of NMR signal due to shielding or de-shielding is called as chemical shift. And a reference standard TMS can be taken at particular position, that is 0 position, and from this particular 0 position we can find out what is the chemical shift particularly. So if you can see here, a proton in the electron poor environment, it will be de-shielded protons, it will be going towards downfield at high frequency, and it will have the large delta values, that is large chemical shift. You can see over here. Likewise, whenever protons are in electron dense environment, these protons will be shielded, the field will be upfield. At low frequency there will be very smaller delta values, and therefore it will be towards the TMS peak, isn't it? This is what is the formula for chemical shift that we have seen already. So there are certain factors which affects the position of the peaks. These factors are, say, what are the types of proton, what is the inductive effect, what is the anisotropic effect or non-environment effect, non-uniform environment, and what is the effect of hydrogen bonding. So all of them, they are very interesting part to understand the interpretation of NMR spectra. So if you look at the type of proton, it has been observed that the primary protons, they are resonate at the higher field, or what we can say as lower delta or lower chemical shift, while the tertiary proton, they resonates at the lower field and higher delta as compared to the secondary proton, and which means that the resonating frequency of primary will be highest, secondary will be middle, and the tertiary will be the lowest one, and the chemical shift of the primary will be lowest one, secondary will be the middle one, and the tertiary will be the highest one, isn't it? Likewise, in case of inductive effect, if you see, if an electron withdrawing group is present near the proton, it pulls the electron, and therefore the de-shielding of the proton takes place, and such proton resonates at the lower frequency, and therefore higher chemical shift takes place. Say, for example, if you see, take the example of methyl chloride, dichloride, and chloroform. You can have expect the shifts of chemical shift of 3, 5.3, and 7.3 respectively, isn't it? You can see over here. In case of anisotropic effect, what is the meaning of anisotropic? Anisotropic means non-uniform. So the anisotropic effect is observed when the molecule contains two bonds, or the what we can say, these kinds of bonds where the pi electron cloud generates its own field which is related to applied magnetic field, and this local field has different effects at particularly different locations, and hence this effect is called as anisotropic effect. So if the proton come in shielding region of the field, they absorb basically at the higher frequency, and if they come in de-shielding region, they absorb at lower frequency. We can take the example of benzene, and the protons in this case are de-shielded due to anisotropic effect, isn't it? It can be represented like this. You can see over here, isn't it? And finally, if you try to understand the hydrogen bonding, if a proton is involved in the hydrogen bonding, irrespective of intermolecular or intramolecular, the electron density basically decreases around the proton, and such proton resonates at lower frequency, that is higher chemical shift, You can take any examples like concentrated solution of alcohol. If you give, it will give the hydroxide peak at 4 to 5 ppm, while very dilute solution of alcohol, it will resonate at about 1 ppm only, isn't it? And therefore this property can be used to distinguish between the intermolecular or intramolecular hydrogen bonding. That is very useful. Then the further is the case like intensity of peak is another important aspect wherein we can analyze the NMR spectra. So in case of NMR spectroscopy, the intensity of signal is basically the area under the peak, and it is that way very difficult to calculate the area, and so the NMR spectrometer gives integration lines along these particular peaks. You can see here, and the height of each line determines the area under that particular peak. So the ratio of the intensities of peaks is equal to the ratio of number of equivalent protons in those particular groups, and which actually means that the intensity is directly proportional to the number of equivalent protons in present in that particular group. Say for example, if you take the example of this methanol, there are 3 protons of the CH3, 2 protons of CH2, and 1 proton of hydroxide, isn't it? Similarly, if you try to see the splitting of the signal, that is spin-spin coupling in the interpretation of NMR spectrum, is very important topic. Is very important topic. That way, because unless you understand this spin-spin coupling, you won't be able to predict why the particular peak has split into doublet or triplet or quartet, and therefore it is very important to understand the splitting of signals. So these signals usually they split. So whenever the two sets of equivalent proton they are present on the adjacent atoms, they affect the signals of each other whenever they are present. So each of the proton generates its own field in or opposite direction to the applied magnetic field. So it will have different effect if it is along the direction or opposite to the direction of the field. And therefore, due to this particular effect, each of these signal will be splitting into the multiplet, and this particular splitting of signals is called as a spin-spin coupling or spin-spin splitting. Say for example, if I take the structure of 1,1,2 dibromoethane, isn't it? And this molecule is particularly expected to give the two signals, and which will have the ratio of 1:2, because this is a kind of peak with a single proton, and there are 2 protons of B environment, isn't it? And therefore it is expected to have 2 signals of the ratio of 1:2. Now 8 kind of proton can generate its own field which will be in or opposite to the direction of applied magnetic field, and hence the effective field experienced by this B kind of proton will be either higher or lower than the applied magnetic field, isn't it? This particular experience of this B kind of proton will be called as coupling. That is the effect of this field generated due to the A kind of protons on the B kind of proton will be called as coupling. Now there are both the possibilities, and those are equally probable. That the peak due to the B kind of environment, it can be splitted into the doublet, basically because of the influence of this, and this particular peak, single peak of this A kind of proton can be split into triplet because of the effect of the these 2 protons which are present in the B kind of environment. And therefore therefore this particular peak can be splitted into triplet, and this particular peak will be splitted into doublet, and the intensity of their split will be given by will be of the type 1:2:1. Now on what basis it has shift, now on what basis it has splitted, or this coupling occur, and that is particularly given by this Pascal triangle, isn't it? So if 2 protons have different chemical shifts and are within the 3 bonds, basically, so if these particular protons they are geminal or vicinal, then the protons will be coupled to each other, and the signal will be split into either doublet due to the 2 magnetic orientations of the other proton. And when there are 2, 3 or more neighbors, additional splittings can be observed, and all of these splittings will be different intensities, and those intensities will be governed by the Pascal strangles. So when all the couplings to a given proton are the same, then the regular multiplates are formed, and these multiplates will be of this kind. Say, for example, we can call it as a singlet. If it is split due to the neighboring proton environment into two peaks, so it will be 1:1, that is doublet. When the particular proton is splitted due to the presence of two neighboring protons, so it will be split into the triplet, and it will be of the fashion 1:2:1. When the particular proton gets the splitting due to the presence of three neighboring protons, then you will obtain the quartet. Similarly, you can obtain quintet, sextet, and heptet. Now, one interesting thing you can find out here is always this middle figure will be the sum of these two. I mean, like this 1 plus 1 is 2. Now 1 plus 2 is 3. This 2 plus 1 is 3. Then 1 plus 3 is 4. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 1 is 4. So you can form your own Pascal triangle for half spin on nuclei, like H1 proton case wherein spin is half. This Pascal triangle is followed. You can obtain, like in this case you can see 1 plus 3 is 4, 3 plus 3 is 6, 3 plus 1 is 4, and then this is single peak, and you can go on doing like forming this Pascal triangle, and these compounds will give their effects. So you can have the examples like this particular three protons will split into doublet, so you can have 1:1 doublet, isn't it? Whereas you can have with this proton the influence of these two protons, so this particular hydrogen will split into triplet, and likewise so on. The effect can carry on. This CH2 will split into quartet because it will have influence of these three protons, and so on. So what are the conditions of spin-spin coupling or spin-spin splitting? It is very mandatory for us to know what are the conditions of spin-spin coupling. And if one knows what are the conditions, one can actually predict why the particular spectra is in this pattern. So what are the conditions? We have chalked it down for you in a point wise. So let us look at it from point by point. So the coupling of proton, that is splitting of signals, takes place only if the two protons are separated by maximum of 3 bonds, like this, isn't it? And after that, it can be lowered down. So in this molecule, there can be coupling between A kind of proton, B kind of proton, or B kind of proton and C kind of proton, but A kind of proton and C kind of proton cannot couple. So since there is a gap of 3 bonds. Likewise, the second point to be noted is the proton on the vicinal carbon atom can couple only if they all are non-equivalent. Likewise, this is A kind of proton, this is B kind of proton, and if this is A kind of protons in this particular case, so in molecular 1 there is a coupling which leads to splitting of signal, but in molecular 2 there is no splitting because they are not vicinal, isn't it? And therefore they will not couple. Likewise, the geminal coupling is possible if the protons are non-equivalent. Say if you see A kind of proton, B kind of proton, and C kind of proton, so they all have different environment. So B and C, they undergo coupling, isn't it? Likewise, the splitting of signal takes place in such a way that the value of chemical shift, it does not change. So splitting will be always at their own place where the signal was appeared, and it will not change in terms of the chemical shift in ppm because of the spin-spin coupling. So it is going to remain at its own position, and therefore it will be easier for us to understand what is the splitting for this particular moiety for, or what is that molecule moiety for which the peak has obtained, and what is the splitting, and we can now analyze what is the splitting and what must be the surrounding environment of the proton. Likewise, the multiplicity of the peak is always given by n plus 1, where this n is the number of coupling protons, and therefore, like if you have one proton, so you will have doublet. If you have two protons, you will have triplet. If you have three protons, it will have quartet. If you have four protons, you will have quintet. Likewise, it will go on. So if there are more than one group of non-equivalent protons on the adjacent carbon atoms, the multiplicity rule is given by 2ni plus 1 into 2mi plus 1, and they will multiply that way, and hyperfine splitting will take place, and hyperfine spectra will take place. And say in this molecule, in this example, the signal splits into 2 plus 1 and 1 plus 1. if you take, because they are non-equivalent proton. So A kind, B kind and C kind, if you try to see, so you will have all in all 3 into 3 is 6 peaks. So you will have hyperfine splitted 6 peaks for this particular molecule. Similarly, this is another interesting example. You can see over here, the splitted molecule is shown over here. The relative intensities of the peaks and multiplicity can be directly determined from this particular Pascal triangles that we have seen. So if you see particularly this molecule, what you will get septate for it, isn't it? Now, why septate for this particular proton? Because you have got three protons from here, three protons from here, and therefore there are in all 6 protons. So 6 plus 1, you will be getting septate for this particular compound. If you see over here, the example of this particular halide, now you will get this. These are the A kind of proton, these are the B kind of proton, these are the C kind of proton. So it will follow the n plus 1 rule. So the 3 hydrogens, they will be splitting into triplet due to the effect of these 2 hydrogens, isn't it? Now these 2 hydrogens, they will be splitting due to the effect of these 2 hydrogens into particularly sextate, because these 2 hydrogen are present over here. These 3 hydrogens are or protons are present over here. So 3 plus 2, there are 5, and therefore this particular B kind of B environment protons will split into sextate, and whereas these particularly protons, they will be splitting into triplet due to the effect of these 2 hydrogen. So due to the free rotation of CC bonding, the coupling of the central CH2 group or CH2 CH3 protons and the CH2Br protons is nearly actually same, and therefore we can apply the n plus 1 rule, and therefore this particular sextate is obtained in this particular case. If you see a triplet over here, and a sextate over here for this particular environment, that is B environment. This is an excellent example for what we have seen just now. In spin-spin coupling, the signal splits, and the splitted signals in multiplates, their intensity ratios are given by the Pascal triangle. Now, on what basis this Pascal triangle gives you signal? So basically, the intensity ratio in the multiplate is given by the binomial form of this 1 plus x to the power n, where n is the number of coupling of coupling protons. So you can see here, if you do not have the proton, that is when n is 0, so anything to the power 0 will be 1, and therefore you will get a single peak, and its intensity will be 1. Now, if you have one proton, you will have 1 plus x, and therefore your ratio of this multiplate will be 1:1. In case of 2 proton, you can have this 1 plus x to the power 2, and it will give 1:2:1 intensity ratios. In case of 3 proton, it will give 1:3:3:1. Likewise, you can go on. In case of 4, you can have 1:4:6:4:1 kind of intensity ratios. So that way, this Pascal triangle will help us in understanding the intensity ratios of the multiplates. Similarly, some protons like OH, COOH, aldehyde groups, they undergo rapid exchange, and so they do not undergo coupling. Say, for example, if you consider this case of ethyl alcohol, the hydroxide proton, it do not undergo coupling, and therefore you will always find that there will be a single peak of this particular proton in ethanol. Similarly, the coupling constant J is same for multiplates given by the 2 coupling protons. Now, what is this coupling constant? Due to coupling of adjacent protons, the NMR signal splits into multiplates, and the separation between adjacent peaks in multiplate is called as coupling constant. So it is denoted by J, and it is measured in Hertz. This particularly J value is exactly same in case of protons which couple with each other, and the value of J is independent of the applied field strength. This property of coupling constant can be used to distinguish between a doublet and 2 different peaks given by the non-equivalent proton. There can be a confusion many a times that whether the 2 peaks adjacent to each other, whether they are doublet or they are the peaks by these 2 different non-equivalent protons. So this J value helps us really in that sense to identify whether the given peaks are a doublet, that is a split from a single peak, or they are the peak representing the different non-equivalent protons. Similarly, solvent in NMR spectroscopy plays a very vital role. In NMR spectroscopy or proton NMR spectroscopy, that is H1 NMR spectroscopy, the solvent should not contain a proton, otherwise it will give its own peak. And therefore, the solvents like carbon disulfide, carbon tetrachloride, deuterated chloroform, deuterated benzene, deuterated acetone, all these are used. In many cases, or in several cases, the trifluoroacetic acid can be used because this proton is highly deshielded due to electron withdrawing fluorine atoms along with it, and hence it gives a peak at 11.2 ppm. Apart from that, this NMR spectrum can give you many other vital informations, like it can give the information about the number of signals that has to be determined, or the number of signals what we obtained from the spectrum. They basically determine the number of groups of equivalent protons. So how many number of different groups are present from the equivalent background or equivalent proton background. Similarly, it gives the position of peaks, or whenever we get a position in a peak position in NMR spectrum, it will give the information about the electronic environment of the proton. That means whether it is shielded or deshielded because of the chemical shift. So we can predict very easily about the electronic environment of the particular proton. Now, from the area under peak or the intensity of that particular peak, it will give the relative number of proton in each of the group, and that is what is the vital information that one could get from the NMR spectrum. Similarly, the splitting pattern will give the information about the number of adjacent protons, and this is how this NMR spectroscopy can be used in many of the aspects. Let us have a look at the application of NMR spectroscopy to the organic molecules. Let us initially take the example of ethyl bromide. So we have chalked down all the observations point by point in order to understand it easily. Let us take the case of ethyl bromide. The structural formula of ethyl bromide is given by this CH3CH2Br. Now this molecule contains two groups of equivalent protons, and therefore it is expected to have two signals which are corresponding to, one is corresponding to this environment and another is corresponding to this particular environment. And therefore the ratio of equivalent proton must be equivalent to 3:2. And so the intensity of peak, that is peak area, they also must be in the ratio of 3:2. Likewise, this CH2 group is attached to more electronegative bromine atom, and therefore it should get deshielded, and therefore this CH2 will give a peak at lower delta, that is lower chemical shift, which can be seen over here. So it can be shifted over here, and therefore the low resolution spectrum can be shown as this one. So there are two peaks, it can be shifted because of the lower delta, and this is a peak for CH3, this is a peak for CH2. Now the two groups, this CH2 and CH3, they will undergo spin-spin coupling, and therefore the splitting of signals takes place, and the signals of CH3 splits into triplet due to the coupling with CH2, isn't it? That is 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. And at the same time, this CH2 will split into quartet, that is 3 plus 1 is equal to 4. And this is due to the coupling with this CH3. So it will be split into quartet. And therefore, the high resolution spectra of this ethyl bromide will be looking like particularly this. So you will have quartet for CH2, triplet for CH3, isn't it? Similarly, look at the example of ethanol. This we have seen earlier also, but now we will see the more resolved spectra. So the low and high resolution spectra are shown over here. This is low resolution and this is high resolution spectra. In case of ethanol, there are three peaks, 1, 2 and 3, because there are three groups of equivalent protons. Now since the intensity is 1:2:3, the ratio of proton is also 1:2:3. And since the middle peak splits into the quartet, there should be CH3 group adjacent it. And similarly, the peak on the right hand side splits into a triplet, that is this. It must be adjacent to CH2 group, isn't it? That means CH2 group is adjacent to it. So this singlet on the left particularly, it shows the presence of exchanging proton which does not undergo coupling like hydroxide group, isn't it? And hence the molecular formula for this kind of spectra is CH3 CH2 OH. This is what is a particular trend through which we can analyze the NMR spectra. Similarly, if I take the example of acetaldehyde CH3CHO, so since there are two groups of equivalent protons, two peaks are expected, isn't it? So there are two peaks which are observed in low resolution spectra. So the ratio of this particular spectra is 3:1, correct? And the peak of aldehyde proton will be downfield due to the electron withdrawing carbonyl group, because this carbonyl group is present over here. And the peak of this CH3 will be upfield, isn't it? So in concentrated solution, this particularly CH3 peak, it will be splitted into doublet because of the presence of this CH group adjacent to it, one proton. And this CH will be splitting into quartet because of the presence of this three protons adjacent to it, isn't it? And hence the high resolution spectra will be doublet of CH3 and quartet of CH. Similarly, if I take the example of 1,1,2 tribromoethane, in this case, there are two groups of equivalent proton, A kind and B kind. So if you see, this is A kind and B kind. So the peak of CH will be downfield due to two atoms of bromine which are adjacent to it. And the peak of CH2 will be upfield because of this single only single bromine is attached to this particular, or it is adjacent to it. So the two groups CH and CH2, they undergo spin-spin coupling, and so the splitting of signals take place. So how it is going to split? This CH2 will split into doublet and this CH will split into triplet. So we will have this splitting as doublet of CH2 and triplet of CH. This is low resolution spectra and this is high resolution spectra. This is very raw analysis. How these signals can be split based on this spin-spin coupling is given over here. Similarly, if you look at the toluene, the structural formula for toluene is given like this. So you can have A kind of environment, B kind of environment, B kind of environment in this particular case. So this is again a B kind of environment. So you can have A kind of environment for these three protons, and all five protons, they are into same environment, so B kind of proton. So it is expected to have only two particular peaks, isn't it? And their ratio should also be in that particular format, that is 3:5, and their intensities also should be 3:5 because there are five protons and there are three protons of A environment and five protons for B environment. And this CH3 will show a peak upfield while all the protons of benzene will show a peak downfield, because they get deshielded due to anisotropic effect, non-uniform environment is present. And as there is a proton on the adjacent carbon atom, but all of them, they are separated by more than 3 bonds, you can see over here, there will be no spin-spin coupling, and therefore you cannot there cannot be spin-spin coupling, or there will not be any kind of splitting of signals, and therefore this spectra will be like a sharp signal in both the cases. So you will have two peaks of A kind of environment of proton and B kind of environment, and this low resolution spectra can be shown like particularly this. Similarly, if I take the example of acetophenone, the structural formula for acetophenone is like this: is the A kind of environment for these protons, B kind of environment for these protons, now C kind of environment for these protons, isn't it? Now since there are three groups of non-equivalent protons, the three peaks are expected. That is for two protons, three protons, and this CH3 three protons over here. So A kind of environment, B kind of environment, that is this kind of environment, is you will have these peaks, and for these three C kind of environment protons you can have these peaks. So since the ratio of equivalent proton is 3:2:3, the intensities will also be 3:2:3, more or less. It is shown over here. So this CH3 will show a peak which is upfield, while this C kind of protons will show a peak downfield. Now the two protons which are present over here will show a peak more downfield because they are more deshielded. They are more deshielded due to the electron withdrawing group and the non-uniform environment, which is called as anisotropic effect. And this CH3 will not show any kind of splitting of signals, whereas this B kind and C kind, since they are adjacent to each other, not more than 3 bonds, and therefore they are going to split. So this particularly B kind of environment protons, their signal will split into quartet because of the presence of these 3 hydrogens, and this particular peak of C environment proton, it will be split into triplet because of the 2 protons which are present adjacent to it, and therefore the low resolution spectra of this acetophenone is shown like this, and high resolution spectra is shown like this. There are many other applications of this NMR spectroscopy. This NMR spectroscopy can be used in identification of isomers. It can be used in detection of hydrogen bonding. It can be used in detection of aromaticity. It can be used in detection of keto-enol tautomerism. So basically all the forms you can find out. So in identification of structural isomer, if I try to see, there are the different isomers have different number of groups of equivalent protons, and therefore they will give the different number of signals, and therefore they can be distinguished from that point of particularly. If you see to this particular example, that is 1 chloropropane and 2 chloropropane, you can see the number of peaks are changed. So you can basically find out these are the two isomers. In 1 chloropropane you will get 3 peaks, while in 2 chloropropane you are getting only 2 peaks, and therefore you can actually identify their isomers. The other example is you can detect the hydrogen bonding. Basically, it has always been observed that the hydrogen bonded proton will give a peak which is downfield, and this is due to the deshielding basically. So the detection of hydrogen bonding is possible on the basis of this chemical shift value, and also it is possible to distinguish between the intermolecular and intramolecular hydrogen bonding on the basis of NMR spectroscopy, because in one case this chemical shift will be observed, and in other case it will not be so significant. Apart from that, you can assure about the aromaticity, because on the basis of the pi electron cloud in the aromatic ring, they will lead to anisotropic effect, and therefore the protons attached to such ring, they will get deshielded, and they give particularly a peak between say chemical shift of 7 to 8 ppm, and hence the presence of aromatic ring can be predicted. You can also predict about the keto-enol tautomerism. You can see the example which is present over here. So the keto and enol form, they contains the different groups of equivalent proton, and hence they give the different number of signals, and also on the basis of the intensity of peaks, it is possible to determine the concentration of keto and enol forms. Say for example, if I take the example of acetone, it is found in the mixture of say 80% of enol form and 20% of keto form at particularly room temperature, and they are particularly shown over here. So you can utilize your NMR spectra for analyzing these particular aspects. Let us try to solve one of the numerical which is based on the whatever we have learned now. Let us take a compound M which is having molecular formula C2H4Br2, and it gives the following two NMR signals. So now what are the signals if they are giving doublet with the chemical shift of 2.5 for 3 hydrogen, and quartet for 1 hydrogen, that is at chemical shift of 5.85. Now since there are 2 peaks, there must be 2 groups, that is sure. So 2 groups are sure. Now particularly the peak is at 5.85, the second peak is at 5.85, which shows that one proton is getting highly deshielded, and this is probably due to the electron withdrawing groups, and the deshielding is less for the another group of 3 protons, and therefore I can conclude that the doublet of 3 protons show coupling with the 1 proton while the quartet of 1 proton show the coupling with the 3 proton. And therefore, from this discussion, we can conclude that this compound M should be 1,1-dibromomethane, because we have got this structural formula, molecular formula for this. So bromine is present over here, and therefore from this discussion we can conclude that the molecule which is present is 1,1-dibromomethane. Similarly, we can go on analyzing number of molecules, and we can go on analyzing much of the complicated spectra or molecules from the NMR spectroscopy knowledge. However, this knowledge what we have seen in this particular lecture is very basic, and we can say that this is just the beginning of understanding the principles of NMR. If you would like to really solve the problems based on the knowledge of NMR spectroscopy, one needs to go into much of the details, which obviously is the part of your higher level curriculum, and that will give you the interesting outcome or interesting frame to look at the NMR analysis. So thank you, friends. Before ending this lecture, I would like to thank Professor Anyan Karde of Nagpur University, RTM Nagpur University, and Professor R.M. Jugade of Nagpur University for providing their insight and their help in preparing this lecture. Thank you, friends.